Rain hit the roof like small hands knocking over and over. The small colony on the edge of Zone 9 was quiet, almost asleep. Inside one of the metal homes, a man named Jace sat alone, drinking something warm and bitter. He had just finished a long day fixing broken machines for people who never said thank you. He liked the quiet, the routine, the nothingness of his life. But tonight, everything would change. A loud knock echoed through the walls. Sharp and sudden, Jace looked up, confused. No one visited him, especially not this late. He stood, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. There, standing in the cold rain, was a young alien girl. No older than 17 in human years. She was soaking wet, her white uniform sticking to her skin, and her eyes looked empty like a machine turned off. In her hands, she held a sealed letter with the local authorities' stamp. "Hi," she said in a soft voice, almost robotic. "I'm the girl assigned to you by local authorities. Use me however you want." Jace froze, unsure if he had heard her right. "What?" he asked, blinking. She repeated the same sentence, exactly the same tone, like a machine playing a recording. His hand slowly reached for the letter, and she handed it over without blinking. He opened it, read the short message inside, and his frown deepened. "To Citizen Jace Corin, as part of the Integration Support Program. You have been randomly selected to host Subject No. 1138. You are to provide shelter and observe behavior. Use as needed. No restrictions apply. Regards. Zone 9 Admin Unit." Jace read it twice, then looked back at the girl. She didn't move. Didn't speak, just stared at him, waiting for a command. "This has to be a mistake," he muttered, stepping aside. She walked in without waiting, her wet feet leaving marks on the floor. Jace closed the door, locked it, and stared at her. Again, "What's your name?" he asked. "I don't have one," she replied, still staring straight ahead. "Do you know why you're here?" "I was assigned," he sighed, rubbed his face and sat down. The girl stood in the middle of the room, hands by her side, like a statue. It made him uncomfortable. "Sit down or something," he said. She obeyed instantly. Sitting on the cold floor, not even looking for a chair. Not there, use the couch. Again, she stood, walked to the couch, and sat like she was made of glass, still and stiff. He watched her carefully. She looked alien. Yes, but too human to be just a visitor. Her skin had a faint glow under the lights, and her fingers moved like they were thinking. Something about her didn't feel right. She didn't ask for food or warmth, didn't complain, didn't react. Like she didn't even know she was cold. Jace turned off the lights, but couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed, eyes open, listening. At midnight, he got up and peeked into the living room. She hadn't moved an inch. Still sitting, still silent, eyes open, watching nothing. The next morning, she was already standing when he woke up. "I cleaned your tools and fixed the broken lamp," she said softly. "You did what?" he asked, surprised. "I learned by watching," she added, her voice still flat. Jace looked at his workbench. It was cleaner than ever before, and the lamp was working again. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because I was told to. Be useful." He felt a chill down his spine. Something wasn't right. He tried calling the authority number on the letter, but the line was dead. Not even a beep. His messages were returned with, "Access denied." Jace turned to her again. "Do you even want to be here?" She blinked slowly, like thinking for the first time. "No one has asked me that before," she said quietly. For the first time there was something new in her voice. It wasn't fear or sadness. It was confusion. Like her mind had started to wake up from a deep sleep. He walked closer, trying to read her expression. But she looked away, as if afraid he'd see too much. Suddenly, a small spark flickered from the back of her neck. Jace leaned in and saw a thin, almost hidden implant. Under her skin, it pulsed faintly, like it was alive. "What is that?" he whispered. She didn't answer, just stared at the floor like she was ashamed. That's when Jace knew this girl wasn't just some assigned companion. She was something else, something made, not born. And someone wanted him to find out. Asterisk. The night passed without a single word between them. Jace couldn't sleep. Even though his body was tired, every time he closed his eyes, he saw the girl's face empty. Silent, waiting. The strange message, her mechanical answers, and the implant at the back of her neck kept spinning in his mind. He had seen machines, robots, clones, but never anything like her. She looked alive. But something inside her was broken, or maybe hidden, at around 3 in the morning. Jace walked out of his room quietly. The living room was dark, lit only by the blinking light of a wall console, and she was still there. Standing in the same place where he last saw her. She hadn't sat down, hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the wall like it had secrets. It was like watching a statue breathe. "You haven't moved all night," Jace said, trying not to sound scared. She slowly turned her head, but her face showed no emotion. "I am not allowed to rest without instruction," she said softly. "Instruction?" Jace asked, stepping closer. "I wait for orders," she answered. Jace rubbed the back of his neck, trying to make sense of it all. "You're not a machine," he said. "You're a girl. Even if you're alien, you should rest. You should sleep." She tilted her head slightly, as if his words didn't make sense. "I was made to serve, not sleep," she replied. Those words hit him harder than he expected. It sounded too cruel, too cold, like someone had erased her sense of self. But who would do that? And why send her to him? The next day, Jace tried to act normal, hoping she would act normal too. He made breakfast, left a plate for her, and watched from the corner of his eye. She didn't touch the food, just sat near the door, hands folded in her lap. "You don't eat?" he asked. "I can, but it's not required," she replied. He pushed the plate toward her. "Try it anyway." She stared at the food, then slowly picked up the fork and took one bite. Her face didn't change, no sign of like or dislike. But something was happening, a tiny spark in her eyes, like she was learning how to be alive, one piece at a time. Jace went to work. Left her inside with a few simple tasks. When he returned, the place was spotless again. Tools organized, floor cleaned, even the water recycler was working better. But what really surprised him was the painting on the wall. She had used leftover parts to create a strange symbol, circles, lines, something like an ancient mark. He asked her what it meant, but she only said, "I saw it in a dream." Dream. That word stopped him cold. "You said you don't sleep," he reminded her. She nodded slowly. "I don't, but sometimes when I stand still for too long, I see things. Memories? I don't know if they're mine," she whispered. That night, he didn't sleep again. He sat in the same room with her, pretending to read, but watching her from the corner of his eye. She didn't move much, didn't ask questions. But when the lights flickered, she suddenly froze, like something inside her had been triggered. She whispered a word he didn't understand. It wasn't from any known language. Jace searched the databases but got no results. He wrote the word down, determined to find out later. He noticed a strange scar just above her ankle. It looked like something had been sealed inside, then removed. He asked her about it, and she touched it gently. "They took it out when I failed the test." She said, "What test?" She didn't answer. She turned away, her hands shaking a little. Jace's chest felt heavy. This wasn't just about taking care of someone. This girl had a past no one wanted to talk about. And worse, someone had erased parts of her, maybe on purpose. But something was still left, something waking up slowly late that evening. She spoke without being asked. "Do you know what it feels like to be nothing?" she asked. Jace didn't know what to say. She looked up at him, eyes wider than ever before. "I don't know what I am, but I think I was someone before they changed me." He moved closer, not touching her, just sitting nearby. "If you were someone once," he said gently, "then maybe you still are." Her lips trembled, just slightly, and for the first time since she arrived, she blinked like a normal girl, slow and real, as if a piece of her soul had returned. Outside, something beeped. a long, slow sound from the outer fence. Jace stood up quickly, checking the monitor. A drone was flying near his home, its camera blinking red. It wasn't a delivery drone or patrol, it was scanning. He turned to the girl, but she was already walking toward the back door. "How did you know?" he asked. She looked over her shoulder and said, "They're looking for me." The music box started playing on its own. Jace hadn't touched it, and it hadn't worked in years. It sat on a dusty shelf, forgotten, its melody slow and cracked. He turned toward the sound, confused, but what shocked him more was her voice. She stood in front of the music box, eyes closed, and her mouth moved not with her own words, but with someone else's voice. A man's voice, deep and rough, came through her lips. Speaking in an old language, the words made no sense to him, but they echoed like a warning. Jace froze, goosebumps running across his arms. She wasn't aware she was doing it. Her eyes were still closed, body still like stone. The music box kept turning, note by note, while her mouth recited the strange message. Then silence, her eyes open, wide and wet with fear. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just came out." Jace stepped closer, gently took her by the shoulder. "It's okay," he said. "But tell me, do you know what those words meant?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "But I've heard them in my dreams before." He took out his tablet and played the recording back. She listened, then covered her ears like it hurt her somehow. The words, strange and broken, seemed to unlock something in her mind. She suddenly gasped, like she remembered pain. Jace typed the words into every translation system he had. Nothing came up, but then he noticed something even stranger. The music box had stopped spinning, exactly after 13 rotations, and just underneath its base, a tiny number had appeared in glowing ink. 7 hours 19 minutes and 44 seconds. "A countdown," Jace whispered. "Or maybe a code." He turned the box upside down again, and the number changed. Now it read 7 hours 18 minutes and 56 seconds. The timer was running down. The girl sat quietly on the floor, arms wrapped around herself. "I wasn't supposed to activate," she said softly. "They said I failed all the triggers." Jace looked at her with growing concern. "Who said that?" But she didn't answer. He knew now that her presence in his home wasn't an accident. The authorities had sent her for a reason, and the old letter was a cover. He searched through his old messages, digging deep into encrypted files from his past job there. He found a name he hadn't seen in years, Project Echo Child. It was a blacklisted experiment from a decade ago. Something buried by the government, part alien tech, part human design. A hybrid creation that was supposed to be destroyed. Only one subject had escaped, Subject 1138. His eyes darted back to her, sitting so still in the corner of his room. The number on the music box ticked lower, now at 6 hours 57 minutes and 3 seconds. He didn't know what would happen when it reached 0, but his gut told him it wouldn't be good. "I need to check something," he said, pulling open a locked drawer. Inside was a FIDWA scanner he hadn't used in years. He walked to her and asked gently, "May I scan you?" She nodded quietly, like she was used to being examined. The scanner blinked green, then red, then green again. Data flooded the screen, half of it encrypted, half of it unknown. But one thing was clear. She had an active core hidden deep inside her chest, and it was warming up. She's not just a person, Jace said to himself. She's a message, a delivery, maybe even a weapon. Suddenly, a voice rang out from his wall console, an automated message, blocked before, but now forcing itself through. Unauthorized echo activation detected. It said coldly, "All nearby citizens are advised to evacuate." The voice repeated twice, then vanished. He looked at her again, this time with fear and sympathy mixed. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know why they made me like this." Jace dropped to one knee, held her trembling hand. "Then let's find out before it's too late." Outside, in the dark sky, A small ship changed direction and started flying toward their zone. The girl felt it before she saw it, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "They're coming," she whispered. "For me." The air turned heavy before the ship even arrived. Jace could feel it in his bones, a pressure building slowly, like the world was holding its breath. He watched from his window as the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with something black and metal. The ship didn't land like normal ones. It hovered without noise, its shape smooth and strange, as if it was built in silence, not in a factory. The girl stood still in the middle of the room, her arms tight at her sides, her chest rising fast. "I remember this feeling," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It's when they come to take you back." Jace grabbed a small pack, filled it with tools, and tossed in a weapon he hadn't used in years. "We're not going anywhere unless you want to," he said. She looked at him with wide eyes, a new kind of emotion inside them, hope mixed with fear. But then she touched her neck where the implant was, and her fingers trembled. "They don't ask what I want," she said. "They never have." Jace pulled out his scanner again, pointed it toward her implant, and narrowed his eyes. "There's something else in here," he muttered. "Something trying to wake up." The device beeped once, then showed him something strange, a locked file hidden in her brainwave pattern. It wasn't just code, it was alive, moving, shifting, like it didn't want to be seen. He tapped the screen and tried to unlock it, but the scanner went dark instantly, fried from the inside. The girl winced and held her head, voices filled her ears, not from the room, but from inside her mind. Cold voices, shouting numbers and commands, like ghosts left in her memory. "Unit 1138. Prepare for return," one of them said in a deep tone. She screamed and dropped to her knees. Jace ran to her, held her shoulders. "You're not a unit, you're a person," he said. "You're not theirs anymore." She looked up, eyes glowing again, but now with something stronger anger. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. A blast shook the house, and one wall shattered inward. A tall figure stepped through the smoke, wearing black armor with red lights across the chest. Its voice echoed like metal grinding on stone. "Host Jace Corin, step aside. You have something that belongs to the Authority." Jace stood between the armored figure and the girl, weapon in hand. "She doesn't belong to anyone," he said. The figure didn't move, didn't hesitate. "Failure to comply will result in elimination," it said flatly. The girl stood up behind Jace, her hands clenched, her implant glowing bright white. But this time, something strange happened. Jace felt heat coming off her skin. Not from fear, but power. "Stop," she said, her voice louder than ever before. The armored figure paused, as if confused. "I said stop," she repeated, and this time the lights in the room flickered. The figure raised its arm to fire, but the girl stepped forward, her feet almost floating. A pulse of energy blasted from her chest. Not an attack, not a weapon, just raw energy. It pushed the figure backward through the broken wall, sending it flying like a leaf in wind. She collapsed right after, her body trembling. Smoke rising from her back. Jace ran to her, lifted her head gently. Her skin was too hot, her breath weak. "You're burning up," he said. "I'm not supposed to fight back," she whispered. "They made sure I couldn't." "But you did," he said. "You did it anyway." He carried her into the back room, hid her beneath thick blankets. The sound of more ships echoed in the distance. They were sending more. Jace looked at the scanner logs. Her core energy was climbing fast. If they pushed her again, she might not survive. He opened an old console and connected to a forgotten satellite line. There was one person he hadn't spoken to in years, someone who might know what was done to her. He sent a signal, encrypted and fast, with only 4 words. "She's waking up. Help." Then he sat beside her, watching her sleep for the first time. Not standing, not frozen, real sleep, like a human, and just before she drifted too deep, she whispered one question that haunted him all night. "If I wasn't made to live, then why do I feel like I want to?" The rain wasn't falling anymore, but something colder had taken its place in the air. Silence, but not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that came before something broke. Jace stood by the window, weapon in hand, heart beating fast. She was still asleep in the other room, wrapped in heavy blankets, her breathing soft but weak. He had sent the signal hours ago, and still no reply. Maybe no one was left to reply outside. The second ship landed without a sound, its surface shimmered like black oil. Rippling as it touched the ground, Jace didn't move, didn't breathe. A tall shape stepped out, another hunter. But this one looked different. It wasn't in armor, not fully. It looked more like a person, a shadow with a face. Then it spoke. "Step away from the girl, citizen." Its voice was calm, too calm. "I don't think so." Jace answered, raising his gun. The figure didn't flinch. "She is a failed project," the voice said again. "We're here to shut her down before it's too late." Jace's finger hovered over the trigger. "What's going to happen if I don't?" The figure tilted its head slowly. "She activates something she doesn't understand." Jace blinked. "What do you mean?" "She's not just one of them," the voice said. "She's the last one." Before Jace could ask more, a loud crash shook the building. The girl was awake and glowing. Her skin shimmered like silver fire, and her eyes were no longer just blue. They were pulsing with a deeper light. She floated a few inches off the ground, her body no longer bound by normal rules. Jace rushed to her side. "You have to stop. You're going to burn yourself out." "I can't," she said. Her voice layered with something unnatural. "They're calling me again." Jace looked over his shoulder, but the figure was gone, vanished into smoke like it was never real. He grabbed her hand, grounding her, anchoring her. "You are here with me," he said slowly. Her breathing slowed, and she touched her chest. "I feel like I'm splitting apart," she whispered. "One side wants to return, the other wants to stay." He helped her sit down, then checked the countdown hidden inside the broken scanner. Only 1 hour left. Something was going to happen. The ship outside was gone, but the sky above was changing again. Not with ships, but with static, with bending light, like a hole being torn into the air. Suddenly, the console blinked, and a reply finally came through. The message was short. Just a few words. "Stop the core before 0, or she becomes what they feared." Jace stared at her, at the pulse in her skin. "What did they put inside you?" He whispered. She looked at him, tears on her cheeks now. "I don't know," she said. "But it's loud, and it's waking up." He opened his emergency kit and found the last thing he never wanted to use, an old override key. It could shut her core down, but only by forcing a full reset. If he used it, she might lose everything, even the little identity she had built with him. She saw the key in his hand and nodded slowly. "If you do it, I forget you," she said quietly. "I forget myself." Jace didn't move, his hand shaking. "I won't do it," he said. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," she replied, smiling through her pain. "This is what I was made for." Jace dropped the key to the floor. "No," he said. "You weren't made for destruction. You were made broken, yes, but that means you get to rebuild." She reached out and touched his face. "Why do you keep fighting for me?" "Because," he whispered, "you're the first person who made this empty place feel alive." Outside, the light above cracked open like glass, and from the sky, something began to fall, something large and burning and fast. She stood, strength returning, and looked at Jace with glowing eyes. "If I survive this, will I still be me?" He nodded. "If you don't give up, yes," she smiled, and walked toward the door as the world trembled around them. No longer hiding, no longer afraid. This time, she would face what was coming, not as a tool, not as a weapon, but as someone who finally wanted to live. Asterisk. The fire didn't fall from the sky like rain. It came like a scream, a red tear ripping open the clouds. Jace stood in the doorway, shielding his eyes as the burning shape crashed into the old field outside. The ground shook like it was angry, dust flying into the air, and silence followed like death holding its breath. She didn't flinch. She walked toward the smoker. Back straight, her steps slow but strong. Her body glowed brighter with every step, like something inside her was finally done hiding. Jace followed, gripping a cracked energy blade. Unsure what waited ahead but unwilling to leave her alone. They reached the crater together, and from inside the smoke, a voice called out, not in warning, but in welcome. "You came back," it said. The voice was female, strange and soft. Another girl stepped out of the crater. Almost a mirror of her, but darker, same eyes, same face, but twisted with wires and scars. "You weren't supposed to wake up first," the new girl hissed. "That's not how the code runs," she froze, recognizing the voice and the face. "I know you," she said quietly. "You should," the other replied. "We were born in the same lab. Same day, same command line." Jace's grip on his weapon tightened. "What are you?" he asked. "We're sisters," the darker girl answered, but I remembered faster. The ground beneath them buzzed, and strange signals blinked in the sky above. Something had connected. Activated. Jace looked at the girl beside him, the one he had protected. She was shaking, not from fear, but from something else, like her mind was being pulled in two directions again. "She's triggering me," she whispered. "She wants to pull me back." The darker one stepped closer. Her hand stretched out. "Join me," she said. "We're meant to control the system, not live like pets." "You don't understand," Jace said firmly, stepping in front. But the girl behind him placed a hand on his shoulder and moved. Past him, she stood face to face with her copy, light against shadow. "I don't want to be a system," she said. "I want to be a person," her double sneered. "Then you'll die like one." The attack came fast, a wave of static energy, meant to shut down her core. But this time she didn't fall. She stood in the blast, arms wide, absorbing the pulse into herself. Her eyes flashed, her skin cracked with light, and she screamed, not in pain, but in release. She had broken the rule, the code, the control. Jace watched in awe as the air around her bent like metal under heat. She was no longer part of the old program. She was writing her own. The darker girl staggered back, blinking in disbelief. "You shouldn't be able to do that." "I shouldn't have survived," she replied. "But I did." Then she turned to Jace, her voice calm. "She has a failsafe inside her," Jace understood at once. "If she dies, the core resets," she nodded. "And if I die first, she gets full access to every network on this planet." The decision hit like thunder. Either one of them had to fall. Jace stepped forward, blade in hand, but she stopped him. "This is my choice," she said. "I was born from command, but I will end it by will." She walked back into the crater, the two girls circling each other like old enemies. With the same blood, the sky above continued to twist, showing flashes of the past lab tables. Wires, cold scientists watching from glass. Jace stood outside the crater, breath held, heartbreaking. He saw the girl he once thought was just a quiet stranger now stand like a warrior. Not trained but awakened, they clashed in the center of the impact, light against shadow, memory against code. One fought with rage, the other with love. The crater filled with noise, then silence, and in the final moment, one voice cried out, "I choose to live." Then everything went white. The white light faded like morning mist, and for a long moment, the world held still. No wind, no sound, not even the hum of power in the walls. Just silence, deep and soft, like the pause between heartbeats. Jace opened his eyes slowly, the sky above clear and blue again. The crater was still there, smoking at the edges. Quiet now, he stood, body aching, unsure what he would find inside. He walked toward the center, each step slow, heavy. There was only one figure standing in the middle. It was her. She was barefoot, her clothes torn, her skin no longer glowing but real. Warm, alive, her eyes met his, and they weren't pulsing with code anymore. They were just eyes tired, human, and full of tears. "You won," he whispered. "No, she said softly. I didn't win. I just chose not to lose myself. He walked to her, afraid to speak, but she smiled, small and real. I'm still me, she said. And she's gone. Jace looked behind her. There was no sign of the other girl, no shadow. No machine parts, only a single mark in the dust, shaped like two rings crossing. The symbol from her earlier dream. She dropped to her knees suddenly, breathing hard. Jace caught her before she hit the ground, holding her close. What's wrong? The core, she said. It's broken. I can feel it fading. He shook his head. No, you're free now. They can't control you. I'm free, she agreed. But my body wasn't built to last this way. Jace didn't let go. I won't let you disappear. He said, I don't want to disappear, she whispered. But I'm tired, Jace, so tired. He remembered the override key still sitting back at the house. Maybe it could reset her one more time. But would she still remember him? Would she even still be her? He looked down at her face. And she was crying. I don't want to forget, she said. Not you, not this. He thought for a long time, heartbreaking. Then he made a choice. Not to reset, not to erase, but to try something no manual ever taught. He picked her up, walked back to his home, and laid her gently in the resting chair. He connected every power line, every backup cell, every wire he had. And for hours he worked, not as a soldier, not as a tech, but as someone who refused to let her go. The sun rose again. And Jace still worked, hands shaking, eyes red. Then finally, the moment came. Her fingers moved. Her chest rose. She opened her eyes, blinking slowly. You didn't reset me, she said, confused. He smiled through his tears. No, I saved you as you are. She looked at her hands, touched her face, then looked at him. You stayed. I always will, he said. She sat up, this time with her own strength. And for the first time since they met, she laughed. A real laugh, quiet, strange. Beautiful. He laughed too, not because it was funny, but because it meant she was real. Not a tool, not a weapon, not a project, just a girl who had found herself. Later, when the stars came out, she stood on the porch with Jace beside her. What will you do now? He asked. She thought for a while, then said, I want to learn everything. He smiled. Then let's start tomorrow. She looked up at the sky, her hair blowing in the wind, and said softly, almost to herself, I think I'll choose a name. He looked at her curious. What will it be? She smiled again, eyes warm. I don't know yet, she said, but this time I'll choose it for me.